And it is a beautiful hot afternoon here in Tel Aviv, and I have the pleasure of talking to a person that I have interacted with on LinkedIn for years, it seems, Wessam Sonbol from Delve Health. Where are you calling in today, Wessam?
Hey Danny, good to meet you, man. Good to see you finally. So I'm calling in from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Cool. All right. So really, literally cool. It's like in the low 90s here. And if you want to get anything done, you have to get it done before like 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it's what 80 degrees here and 80% humidity. So you don't
Uh,
want to be here right now. I'd rather take that. I'll take the dry heat.
yeah, we're like 95 with yeah. Yeah, so it's a pleasure to have you on the show. We've been like interacting for a while, and we're here to hear about you, your story about Delve Health, value creation, value capture, and things you want to do for your customers. And you're doing amazing work. And I'll just do a quick introduction. So my name is Danny Lieberman. I'm the host of Life Sciences Today. I've been in the clinical trial space for, I don't know, for about 7, 8 years and exited about a year and a half ago. And now I have the pleasure to talk to smart people like Wessam who are changing the face of clinical trial operations. And,
Thank you.
so Wessam, tell us about your personal journey. I know you have an interesting story.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Egypt. Moved to the US back in 1990. Grew up here in Minnesota. Um, Went to college and high school here. Moved to the Bay Area for a little bit. Moved back to Minnesota. Founded Delve Health back in it's been a few years now. Pivoted a few times and founded Delve really. My mom had cancer. I've been in this industry for about 25-ish, 26 years or so. And, my first thought when she had the disease, I was like, I got to get into a clinical trial. And when I did, it was daunting. It wasn't the science that failed her. It was the process, the manual operations, the back and forth drives. And that's when I thought there's something better that I can do, for people like my mom and people that want to get better treatments and people that feel that they can be part of these types of clinical trials. So that's why we're here. That's why we started Delve, and the core is to truly help deliver clinical trials at scale at home. So.
That's a very, very important thing. Someone um, talking to someone a while back about clinical trials, and one of the people on my team was a site coordinator at Hadassah Hospital, and um, and she was our best salesperson because she understood the difficulties at sites. And when people would ask her, "What is the biggest challenge for patients?" she would say, "Finding parking at Hadassah." And it's true. It's a humongous hospital. It's gigantic. Okay, and if you would, it would take you if you had to walk. They have shuttles from the parking lot. So right, the shuttle you have to wait 10 minutes for the or 10 15 minutes for a shuttle, and then it take another 10 minutes to get to the main hospital building. Then you have to navigate inside the complex. There was a joke that I guess it's kind of like any big medical center where they have like underground levels. And I know this was true at UCLA also, but so at Hadassah they have three underground levels, and the joke is that they leave bags of food for patients who get lost inside the tunnels.
If
So
you get lost, you've got enough food to last you for a couple of days, huh?
yeah, exactly right. Yeah, so it's like it was like a joke because people are always asking for directions, and then of course at one point when they were doing new construction, the underground two was like meeting underground one at another part of the complex, so it was like a little tricky. So people were starting at one place and then somewhere else. It was like it's like these science fiction movies where you like jump through a black hole and you end up somewhere else. And
That's funny.
yeah, so tell me what you're doing, who are your customers, and how you create value for them. I kind of know, but I want our listeners to hear the story from you, man.
Yeah, so so the biggest thing that we are really trying to drive is better data quality, right? It's kind of the life of clinical trials. So what we've done is actually we built so it's a solution and services, a platform play first, a tech play first, where we want to enable FDA grade wearable devices in patients' homes. We want to help improve retention, right? We want to make sure that patients are able to be part of these clinical trials much longer than they do, right? Like when we talk about like patient dropout, like at a what, 30-40% rate, depending on the studies. But
Mm.
also when you think about like, rare disease, right? You don't want to lose one patient because that will cost you a lot of money. So how can we keep them engaged, right? But then also, how can we collect the right information from them? So when we think about, hybrid trials of sorts, right, rather than, for example, some of the studies that we run, we take the study and we're almost like challenging the traditional CRO model, right? Rather than having patients having to go into the office every month, every few weeks, etc. There are better ways that we can do it. Like maybe a patient only needs to go to the doctor's office maybe once every 6 months, and during that period of time, we can monitor them through FDA grade, devices, through remote patient coordinators, things of that nature. So what we're enabling is we're enabling better data quality. We're enabling better retention to these clinical trials. We're enabling a hell of a lot of operational efficiency. I mean, some of the customers that we've had, before, actually one specific one, they were like, good God, every Friday we have to call the site to figure out the status of every patient, the status of the study, etc. And we're like, well, we can automate all that for you, right? And then on top of that, we layer we've got about 32 different AI agents that can engage all the stakeholders of the clinical trials, patients, caregivers, sites, etc., based on what's working, what's not working, what we're missing from them, things of that nature. And then we have our own team, right? Remote coordinators that can pick up the phone, call the patients, call the sites. Because also when we look at it, we talk about patient burden, but also there's a site burden, right? Your site is not your tech support. Your site are busier with other stuff, right? So when we utilize different capabilities, the trial goes a lot smoother at a much faster rate.
Right. So that's actually a really important thing. I think one of the things that people outside the industry don't really understand is that site burden. There's a lot of focus on patients, and rightly so. But again, um, coordinators are doing other things. They're multitasking on 4 or 5 trials at the same time. They're multitasking between 4 or 5 different EDC systems, each one poorly designed, worse designed than the other one. And so their life is like, from an IT perspective, their life is not sweet. Okay. And so how do you help the site coordinators? How do you make the site coordinators your best friend forever?
Yeah, that's a good question. So 20% of our business is direct to site. We have our own, so Delve as an organization, we've got about 3 different hubs worldwide. And one of our hubs is out in Belize, where we have our own call center. They're all people that are trained on your protocols, trained on your studies, and all they do, they talk to patients all day long. I mean, amongst all of them, they talk to at least 1,000 patients a day, right?
Wow.
Whether they're trying to help, support the study, whether they're trying to help screen some of the patients, whatever that is. So it's an aspect of the study where they pick up a lot of that heavy lift, right? And then when we deploy them in some of the studies, if patient, let's say their COA data is not coming in as fast or whatever, they pick up the phone and call the patient and say, hey, we're not getting the data coming in. What's going on? They offer that added support. So that way the sites, they don't have to be overwhelmed by, oh, I've got to watch this patient, I've got to connect with them, etc. So
They don't
those are
have to
some
be
of the ways that we
babysitters, right? Yeah, for the data.
correct.
That's huge. And so I assume that you actually, it sounds like you're also providing tech support for the different applications. So if a sponsor is using a particular EDC for the sake of argument, saying Viva EDC, then that means that your call center is trained on that study build.
if they're trained on those different components, then yes, they will offer the support as we see kind of fit.
Well, that's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, yeah, and it depends on the studies that we do, right? Some of the studies we take on studies end to end, right, where we will really kind of help run the studies, support the study, the support the patients, etc. Some of the studies we come in and we might need to integrate with other EDC systems and maybe other co-op vendors to, from that to automate patient engagement and kind of figure out how do we nudge patients. So it depends on what aspect of the study that we really need to come in and help support.
Cool. So it sounds like a lot of upfront integration and training work that you need to do to set up a study. I mean, people work, systems work, SOP work, you know, surface level objectives work. So there's just a lot of stuff. So
Yeah, it's almost like you think about kind of the quality of the study, right? Like it's like what the ICHR3 guidelines, right? Like how do you make sure that you're de-risking your study and you're deploying all the quality measures that you need into the study upfront to make sure that like it's kind of smooth sailing from there, you know? And so we do it up front. The system, it's not like we have to build a system for every study, but we have to configure the ways of engagements for every study based on the protocol, things of that nature. And then even kind of we have our latest tool, which is an AI agent that can actually engage patients based on the protocol, provide answers to these patients, things of that nature. So that way, maybe rather than a patient wanting somebody to call them, maybe they're chatting with somebody. I mean, you and I probably use Chat GPT more than we should be, but it's almost kind of the same concept, but within like within a closed setting specific for that study as well.
the patient is now chatting with a chatbot,
Correct, exactly.
that the chatbot has been tuned or
Yeah, so our chatbot has been trained on over 50 million data points. And then when we deploy it specific for each study. So that way the study actually gets their own closed box, right? So that way, you want to make sure that privacy and security is all kind of tightened down. So that's kind of why we do it this way. And then we enable it for the study.
so if, say for the sake of argument, I'm in a atopic dermatitis study, okay? And I have a question, and you give me a link to the chatbot. So the chatbot actually that I access, that instance of the chatbot has context to the protocol for that atopic dermatitis study. That's correct?
Exactly. Yes.
And so if I said I'm itching more than usual now, then what can it do? Can
If
I
it what? I'm sorry.
let's say that I'm having some adverse events. Okay, let's
Yeah.
say I'm taking say atopic dermatitis is typically a cream. Let's say I'm putting on the cream. Let's say in the middle of the study, it seems like it's getting worse. Okay, so I pull up chatbot and I say,
Ask the
hey,
question.
question. I'm taking it, and I don't tell the chatbot how I'm doing it. I'm saying I'm taking the study. I'm taking the study ointment, and it seems like I'm getting more itching than usual. Okay, what do you think? So what happens now?
Yeah. So it will answer based on what's in the protocol, right? So if the protocol highlights this as, hey, this is a possible adverse event,
Right.
please call the site. It can create that as a possible adverse event, create a nudge to the site, hey, patient did this, etc. And then once the chat bot is closed, then the patient actually receives, hey, here's the full transcript that happened. So we save the transcript of all the questions and answers. So that way, if we need to take that information and punt it over to the site, so that way the site is able to review it, we can do that. The other thing that we can also do is we can actually schedule calls on the fly, right? We can enable it to say, you want to schedule some time with your investigator or with your coordinator. we give them a link. Here's, choose a time that works for you, and then we help them kind of select the time. So there are some different options as to what do we want to enable for the study. And it's interesting because every sponsor is different, every study is different, right? So those are all things that we have to identify and figure out, how does the sponsor see it happening? We can always share, here's kind of what we've seen work, and here's kind of what we know that might not be a good idea, etc. But at the end of the day, the sponsor has to kind of give their thumbs up or down on whether we should do this or not.
How involved is the site in the, let's say, the user engineering? Do you like run this by the site before you deploy it?
Yeah, we've been running it by some site networks to kind of get their feedback. I think sites is actually is a really important factor because, to your point, they see patients a lot. We might talk to patients a lot, but they actually see them. They're the bulk that kind of puts it all together. So no, we've been running it by sites, getting feedback, etc. And it's been received fairly well.
Sites like you?
I hope so.
Give me a phone number of a site. I'm going to call them up right now and ask them if they love.
I'll, I'll, I'll give you three.
Okay, yeah, I'll call them up right now after the podcast. I'll ask them how much they love Delta Health.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's kind of really actually really a lot of value, I think, for the sponsor, also for the site being able to kind of offload that kind of babysitting and kind of schedule interrupting things, right? So, um, how do you capture value?
Ooh. So we capture value. So we look at when we run a study, we look at an ROI, right? What does our ROI look like? Can we finish the study on time? Can we capture data appropriately? We're always shooting for at least 90% compliance, if not better. We're always shooting for better retention. So those are all value adds to the customer. If we're able to make sure that we deliver that value, and guess what, their ROI can be 3x. So when we think about it, if a study is delayed, then that kind of delays their launch of their drug or device. So they're gonna lose money, time, all this stuff. So it's more beneficial for us to help them reach their goals much easier, much faster. Make sure that they have more quality data. Make sure that the patients are engaged. Those are all, we look at these are value-driven approaches, and that we need to make sure that we've got all of our hearts and boots into it to make sure that we're delivering the value. So
So, who are your customers?
yeah, so 20% of our business actually we sell direct to sites. And then the rest, and then the rest we sell to, pharma, biotech, medical device companies, etc. Anybody that's really running some sort of an evidence research-based study of sort.
Do you sell to CROs?
No, not really. We don't really do a whole lot with CROs. CROs don't like us very much because we
They,
automate so much work. They don't make as much. They end up not making as much money.
you shortcut them, right? Yeah.
We shortcut them, that's for sure.
Yeah, you shortcut. You're doing good work. You're doing a good deed. We were talking about
We've
good.
been,
Yeah.
it's interesting when we started Delve, we had a CRO that was really interested in what we're doing, right? And for 6 months, they're like, let's iterate, let's do this. And they're like, promised us, like, hey, we're going to buy, right? And when we came to the end of it, we're like, okay, like, are you going to buy? And then one of the directors kind of sat with me and like, well, Sam, our sales team doesn't want to deploy this. And we're like, why? They're like, well, we don't get to charge as much. We don't get to deploy all these things that we need to do, boots on the ground, etc. And it was the first lesson that I ever learned of working with CRO. So uh yeah. So anyway, so we go direct to sponsors and pharma, etc.
Yes. Now, going directly to the sites is really, really interesting for many reasons. My first guest, like a year ago, was Kurt Messina, who has a site
Mhm.
organization. He's
Yep.
pretty active on LinkedIn. He's a great guy, amazing guy. He talks about the rise of the sites.
Yep.
So Kurt Messina really believes strongly that not small individual specialty sites, but like site networks that specialize and get better and better. They're moving up the supply chain. And,
Yeah.
and
Um,
is that something
yeah.
you're seeing?
So we work with sites directly on more from a concierge and patient support perspective, right? We offer value there from the perspective of flat fee model, multilingual concierge teams that can help support patients in different regions, etc. Um, yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Spanish, right? Spanish, right? There are a lot of Hispanics.
Spanish, English, right? Yeah, so that's kind of where we're adding value from a site perspective. It kind of helps them run faster, easier, cheaper, right? For a matter of fact. So that's kind of where our engagement with the sites are at.
Cool. Um, so I guess that means I'm trying to get my head around this. I think I know the answer, but I don't want to guess. So I'll ask you. So let's say I'm a sponsor, right? And remember, I'm developing an atopic dermatitis ointment. It's going to make everyone really, really happy. In the meantime, I'm doing a multi-center study with 20 sites across the US and maybe a bit in South America. And not all of the sites use Delve Health. A few do. So how does that work?
So it depends. So if a sponsor is choosing Delve Health, then all the sites will be using Delve
Ah,
Health
got it. So if I came
because
to
we
you
have.
at the beginning of the study, and then when you do site initiation, then that means you say you're going to get the Delve Health, package, right?
Correct. Yeah, because we'll run usually so for atopic dermatitis, for example, right, they're gonna have some sort of wearable, right? So they're gonna integrate the wearable into our platform. Well, they'll probably most likely use our eCOA capabilities. Everything comes packaged with our automated patient engagement, right? So we configure the engagement across all the different sites, right? So everybody will be logging into our system. We act almost like as a digital health platform, but is very focused to clinical trials. And that's really the reason why all the sites would be logging into our platform to register all the patients, collect all the data, and then our automation just kind of really works on its own. And that's kind of really one of the beautiful things about it is we reduce a lot of burden off of a site, where site doesn't have to call the patient anymore, right? Our AI engine or our engagement capabilities will nudge the patients, but also caregivers, right? If we need a caregiver into the study, right? So it knows exactly who to nudge and when. So.
That's really important. It's a great point that you mentioned. We had that in a Parkinson's study that we did at my previous company, and it was actually like there were four languages in the study. There was English, Hebrew, Russian, and Arabic. And
Hmm.
because it was Parkinson's, and we had a connected device actually, and ePro and EDC. So
Hmm.
there were cases because Parkinson's patients have trouble using the ePro, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the caregivers were part of the were part of the
Part
loop.
of this.
And
Yeah.
and I remember support they were talking to. I remember a case where the sponsor was, opened a ticket with us and said, there's some problem with the software. And so they called up, they said, fine, just give us the phone number of the caregiver. And they called up the caregiver, who was a guy in Nazareth, okay, and his
Mhm.
wife was a PD patient. And my support person talked to him and said, "How can I help you?" And he said, um, "Well, we're having trouble using the ePro, but it's not your problem. It's my Wi-Fi connection. My ISP sucks."
Yeah, yeah, we do a lot with like what do you call it? Like offline data collection. That's kind of one of the things that we learned early on is like to exactly those types of reasons is like we gotta need to make sure that doesn't matter where you are, you should be able to always collect. Like for example, when we were doing studies like in South Africa, for example. Sometimes like for vaccine studies, sometimes we got to do kind of offline data collection. Once you get Wi-Fi, push the data up to the system. So those are some components that we had to make sure that we, kind of really becomes part of the system. So
That's huge. That's huge. I think that people, there is so much you know, West Coast mentality that everyone is from the West Coast and they have an iPhone 16 and they have fast internet and they're like 20 or 30 something. They're like, there's no problem. They're just, on their phone all the time. They can use it. And people don't understand, I think, really, people do not totally understand that the entire world is not based on Gen Z people from the West Coast with iPhone 16s, but there are people like this older man in Nazareth who has a crappy Wi-Fi connection and his wife can't use the ePro because and he's sitting in and he's taking care of it. And that was in the protocol, by the way. But it's like the kind of thing that's the reality. And that you live that reality day to day, don't you?
yeah, and even like honestly, like even in the US, right? 30 to 40% of the US population still don't have access to smartphones, right? Some of them still use, whether they use flip phones, whether they live in some sort of like a rural area where they don't even have, get reception. So it's interesting on so many levels what exists outside of like your normal day-to-day life, things that you don't think about until you actually like dive into it and you learn about it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally with you on that. I know because I've been there. Um, So I mean, we're getting up to the interview question, which is they said interviews say, well, Wessam, where do you want to be in 5 years? Well, this question is like, what are three things, not four, three things you want to do for your customers in the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, good question. Definitely want to add value, right? We want to be able to automate their trials much easier. We want to be able to deliver on the promise that we put out there, and we want to be able to really help them run studies much faster and cheaper, for a lack of better words. So those are some of the things that we really want to drive towards, do for our customers. Um, we're here because we want to be here. We're here because we see a big problem that we want to solve. And we want to truly make sure that we are delivering on our mission, our core values from an organizational perspective. So,
That's really important. One final question. Are you bootstrapped or venture funded?
yeah, we're pretty much bootstrapped for the most part.
Well,
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I had Medical on the show a few weeks ago. They raised like how much? Like 500, I think, or something.
5 or 600. Yeah.
Yeah, I think 600 they raised. Yeah. Well, okay. It's they're a great company. But here you are, you're a great company and you bootstrapped. So God
Thank
bless.
you.
God bless, really. I mean, it's a pleasure having you on the show, and you've had a tremendous journey from Egypt to Minneapolis. And yeah. So, my name is Danny Lieberman. I'm the host of Life Sciences Today. We're part of the Healthcare IT Network, and we have a huge following, and we're growing very, very fast. This is actually, I think, show number 30 in 4 months. So
Nice.
it's kind of a landmark for me personally. And,
Yeah.
and I hope, I look forward to doing a lot more with people who are like, moving the needle in clinical trial operations, people like Wessam. Wessam, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on, Danny. It was a pleasure as always, boss.